Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here for this talk today. I remember being here at the same stage 7 years ago, and that has, in fact, been my last talk ever. And so many things are on the way, and this is the next one. So I wanted to talk about uh, a project that we entered into the 2017 Hackaday Prize called HealthyPi. It's open source vital signs monitoring system for human vital signs. And where it went from there, what we ended up doing, what mistakes we ended up doing, and where we are today. So 2017, we had two projects in the finals. One was the first one, which was named as Connected Health, later became HealthyPi. And the second one was a wearable system called HealthyPatch. So HealthyPi won the second prize, and HealthyPatch was selected as a runner-up for the best product. So with two of these awards, we wondered what next. I mean, people were asking us, okay, with the prize money, are you going to celebrate? Are you going to go to Disneyland? And no, I said, no, I need to pay back all my loans, which we took out to build these things. So for us, this was a question of how to make these into devices and sell them. So in this, as far as the selling is concerned, there are two things that we could do. I mean, we got approached. The Hackaday Prize really pushed our ideas forward, right? So we got known in a lot of different communities, and people started approaching us. Most were investors, and I don't have any idea how to talk to investors. I'm not a business guy. So two paths are available. One is you accept funding from whoever wants to invest in you, and the second was to just still stay open and somehow manage to sell devices and still stay alive. And we ended up trying both of them. What we did not do is sell the idea to another company, and because we were sure that we still wanted to develop the product on our own and also maintain the open source nature of the projects. So with HealthyPatch, with HealthyPatch, we decided, okay, so let's explore the venture funding route, and let's start making devices. Um, so the problem with when you have a device that is open source and you just want an award and you go and ask people for funding, I mean, let alone investors, even banks. First they asked, how many patents do you have? And we said, we don't have any patents. So they said, then what did you build? We said, we built this device and it works, it gives results. But still, they just harp on the no patents issue. Second thing is, this was a new term that I learned after doing that. It's called freedom to operate, and the second question we got asked is, okay, are you infringing on any other patents? So we said, so far as as much as we know, we are not, but it's all out there. It's on Hackaday. Everyone can check it out and let us know if we are doing something wrong. And the last one was, finally we found someone who was willing to invest. Because the way that we saw HealthyPatch was, it was a wearable device which was ready for the market. It can monitor your heart rhythm in real time. It can detect different types of arrhythmia and all that. So the natural path that we saw was to take it to the market, because people started asking us about, okay, how do I get one? How do I get one from my father? How do I get one from my mother? So we did run a crowdfunding campaign on crowd supply, but that was quite limited. It was limited only to developers. So we really thought that taking it to the market would be more impactful. So, yeah, we found an investor who did invest. And so, some of the pros and cons of going to an investor is, yeah, of course, the obvious things are you get instant funding and you get the funding to scale. But the cons are we had a sudden change of culture that there were no more sharing of designs. Every meeting you went to had an NDA to sign, otherwise people don't talk to you, and we are not allowed to talk to each other either. So it was kind of strange for us because coming from an open source team and integrating with such a thing was difficult. Um, so, but we did succeed. HealthyPatch became a company called Patch, um, we are based in Boston, but I mean it was conceived in Boston at least with one of my friends, and but we operated completely out of our home base, India, and it is currently being used. We were successful in developing a product, getting it through. I mean, one of the main challenges of making a medical device is getting through all the regulations and the testing, which is probably the biggest cost here. We were successful in getting through all the medical regulations, um, including the FDA in the US, but we thought India would be a best place to start. So after this, so currently it is available in the Indian market, although I'm not involved completely in the marketing and sales, which I find kind of dull. And I want to stay away from those people as much as possible in order to uh, avoid any more fights. So, um, so I'm once the product was delivered, it was in the market and people started using it. I kind of moved away, and and this is the story of HealthyPi. So, HealthyPi also was in 2017, and this product we decided to keep it open no matter what. Um, Again, the pros are quite obvious, but the main ones are there's no lawyers involved. I mean, at least not until now. And we went the crowdfunding route for this to make it into a product, because there's no point in just making an idea if it's just going to sit on the shelf. So we wanted to go the crowdfunding route, and we launched a campaign on crowd supply. Um, the good thing about crowdfunding is that you already have your customers, so you don't have to pay to figure out who your customers are. But of course, the cons are the funding is severely limited. You have only some money, way lower than what you would get from a venture funding, um, and you always keep getting asked the question, okay, how do you make money? Well, that's what I'm going to answer. And this, I'm talking to you about this, the how do you make money part, because this is my full-time job. We run an open source hardware company called ProtoCentral Electronics, based in Bangalore, India. Um, so just a story of HealthyPi, how it came to be and what it is now. How it came to be is in 2017, we thought, okay, we were already in the medical development field. I mean, my background is in biomedical electronics, and I have developed medical devices before for various different companies, including the Indian defense and everything. So, so this was kind of a natural transition for me. And in 2017, we wanted to, with the first version of HealthyPi, we wanted to just prove the idea that, okay, can you make an open source, a fully open source working vital signs monitor? These are the same vital signs monitor that you find in near the hospital bed or in the ICU. So we proved that it could be done. Essentially, it was a hat for the Raspberry Pi, and it uses the Raspberry Pi's 7-inch display, and it was able to capture ECG, respiration, SpO2, temperature, or anything else that you wish to add to it. That was 2017, and that was called Revision 3. I mean, although it was Revision 1 and 2 failed, so it's 3 is the one that they started with. And so, so we ran a crowd supply campaign, as I told you, and we sold quite a few devices. And but still, the concept was that it was still a open source patient monitor. But people started asking, so what? But still, we had a lot of enquiries for example, medical education, and even monitors in third world countries. We supply to a lot of countries in Africa, um, and even to some people who wanted to build their own in war zones. Notably, not recently, but during the previous Gaza conflicts, some of them are used for medical monitoring. So in 2019, we thought, okay, why don't we just make it wireless? And we called it Unplugged. And we ran another crowdfunding campaign. And this also sold quite a bit. But in between, we had to stop, mainly because the 2020, we had COVID, and we had the shortage of components. But incidentally, we also reserved some stock for COVID research, and as far as we know, at least 5 research teams used it to monitor COVID-related uh, changes in the vital signs and correlating that with long COVID. There was this symptom called long COVID where it just continued. So that was used, and then we ran out of components. So we didn't know what to do, and people were still asking us. I mean, what are you going to come up with? And then we decided to go for a completely. I mean, we stopped depending on most of these highly integrated chips, especially from TI. TI had a severe chip shortage, and we started making things discreetly, like ECG amplifiers and especially power circuits. Power circuits, for some reason, were all. I mean, some of you might be aware that integrated power management ICs were all sold out, and there was no way to get them, at least not for us. So all that happened, and in this year we came up with Revision 5. Revision 5 is based on an RP2040 chip, which is become our favorite chip right now, and an ESP32 for radio. And we also have a new version coming up called HealthyPi Move. Um, we call it Move because it's a wearable version of this, and that is, I'll be talking more about that. With Hearty Patch, unfortunately, I cannot share anything about the evolution, and this is the problem, right? This is what I meant by keeping it open, so that I can still come and talk to you about this today. So the evolution was pretty much this. We had the Hearty Patch from the Hackaday Prize. It goes into a black box and it produces this device, which is currently in the market. I don't think my investors would be happy if I showed what happens inside the box. So we ran 3 crowdfunding campaigns on crowd supply. The latest one ended in June this year. That is almost after a 4-year gap. We launched a new one, and we've been successful to some extent. Although there have been a lot of questions about, okay, will you be delivering on time, and is there still any issues related to availability and things like that? But we're happy to say that a couple of days ago, we sent our first shipment to Crowd Supply, and they should be delivered next week. So this is the one. So again, this is from a lot of different features. I'm not going to go into the details, but we decided to make it into something that is actually field usable. If people want a display, they can use a display, or if they just want to record stuff, it has an onboard flash memory for recording days of data, or they can be wirelessly transmitted. Uh, so, so I just wanted to quickly go through some of what we encountered. Again, I'm not an expert in product development, but I wanted to just show you what uh, issues we faced during the product development process. Um, First is listening to people who would potentially buy your product. This is, we dropped the ball on this a couple of times. We made something and looks like people didn't want it, and I'll go into more detail about that. Here, the Hackaday community helped quite a lot. They came up with a lot of ideas, and we integrated most of them. Um, and the rest is all straightforward. So yeah, this is the first thing that I said. I mean, listen to your customers and learn. Um, and you will also be surprised because sometimes you don't know what ideas will come up. These are actually two comments that came up on our crowd supply page, um, asking if they can buy devices to do this. One guy wanted to use it for um, he was a sniper, and he wanted to use it for measuring his heart rate in the rate of milliseconds um, before pulling the trigger, before releasing the trigger actually. And he said, "Can we use it for that?" We thought, okay, we never thought about sniping before, but yeah, okay, sure. And that was quite out there, but I guess he was successful in doing what he wanted because he wrote to us with a field report. The second one is, I mean, this is just two of the ones that I picked out of the lot of comments. And second was to measure arrhythmia apparently for cats. I did not know cats had arrhythmia before. Apparently they do, and cats have rhythm issues. So this guy, I guess he strapped it onto his cat and collected some data. And these people were two that actually used it and who wrote to us about it. So you'll be surprised at what customers come up with. So this is the power of keeping it open source, right? I mean, you show what can be done and you get new use cases for it. Yeah, and the second advice that I have is freeze your design early on, unless you want to end up with so many revisions. We had 5.0, which we never ended up sending it to fabrication. Then we had 5.1, and somebody asked, okay, uh, the SD card, we sent it out to a few testers, and they said, okay, the SD card here keeps falling out, change it to a different slot, and we did. And I wish we would have compiled all this in the beginning to avoid so many revisions. And the others were related to positions of LEDs, simple things. And somebody else wanted, okay, how do you ensure security in this device? So is there a there are these chips called secure elements that are used to store keys and so on. So we added a secure element where we store the keys, and that also does the encryption and decryption. So so that was added in 5.6, and finally we settled on 5.7, which was the one that we shipped last week. Some of our tools and Our latest favorite thing to use is Zephyr, and almost all of our software is based on Zephyr. Yeah, and chips. A little bit about the firmware design. I'm not going to talk about the GUI was written in processing, which is open source, cross-platform, easy to use, and still surprisingly powerful. And for the mobile apps, we used Flutter, which is also surprisingly powerful given that it's so simple to use and it's cross-platform. So Flutter compiles natively on Android and iOS, and there is no interpreter involved. So these are our apps where you can monitor. Uh, I'd be happy to show some of these. I have some devices with me. If somebody's interested, I can show it after the talk. And just a little bit about the architecture, because I feel that reusability of code is very important. Um, so here we had an architecture, right? For HealthyPi 5, we had this kind of an architecture where we have an RP2040 on one side, and which does not have radio or Bluetooth. And we had an ESP32C3 module on the other side, which runs, both of them run Zephyr, and one runs the Zephyr controller stack at the HCI level. It's called H4, and the RP2040 just runs the regular stack like almost as if it had BLE radio built in. And this was pretty easy to achieve, and it's surprisingly fast, and it is low power. So this was what really made us closer to Zephyr. We have used Zephyr before in different things, starting from the days when it came from Minute, but things were really difficult at that time. So again, I don't work for Zephyr. I'm not marketing Zephyr, but I just wanted to show you that how it is. It's although it is architecturally equivalent to Linux kernel and everything, it is surprisingly high performance. It's very high performance compared to anything else that we've done. So what this means for HealthyPi is, so we have a HealthyPi 5, which is the latest version. It's got an RP2040 plus ESP32 that I showed you just now. And we have a HealthyPi Move, which is the wearable version. I have a prototype of that also, if anybody is interested. It's a watch kind of setup. And it also does the same thing. It's got ECG from, I think I have a slide on that. If not, I can explain it later. But the cool thing here is that we still share the same HealthyPi 5 code base. And when I say share the code base, it's exactly the same, except the sizes of the screens. It's exactly the same, and the same code runs on RP2040 as it runs on a NRF 5340 from Nordic. If you don't know, it's got 2 cores, and it's also, we found out that it's internally connected. It's internally connected through different protocols, OpenAMP and everything, but essentially it runs as a HCI host and a HCI controller, which is the same thing that what we did. So we ported the same thing there, and the same code compiles and runs, which is pretty amazing in embedded systems, because things rarely work that way. Although they say it's portable and everything, you still have something to rewrite. And so this gives us confidence, and so we intend to build more application-specific versions, maybe the one for the cat, and future versions, just based on this code base. This is what I said. So no porting. There are these DTS, board definition files, which is very similar to the DTS files and the overlay files in the Linux kernel. And it's pretty amazing that it works exactly the same way on an embedded device as well. And overlay files, yeah, we can use that to um, compile binaries, native binaries, for all of our platforms from the same code base. Modular applications, and the applications itself can be modular. In fact, recently we tried out something called Zephyr can load linked modules at runtime. So, which means that it can actually load programs in runtime from Flash and run it, which was pretty amazing to us, given that it's only an embedded system with a single microcontroller. Yeah, another thing we learned during the process of making this production ready. Um, I've not gone into the details of how we call this production ready, but what would be required to get your production ready is to make sure you comply with all the um, environmental, EMI, EMC, and the basic requirements that are required for a C or a UKCA mark. So this was, we have done this for HealthyPi before, but that was a different thing, because that was a different lab. We had a ton of money and we just kind of outsourced that part. But here we had to do it ourselves. With a local lab. So the first picture that you see is an anechoic chamber to test the emissions, the radio emissions. Second one for ESD, and then the third one is for a line testing. So this is when you get surprised, right? So we take this board. So we've already reworked on this board so many times. So this is version 5.6, which is what we decided to freeze as the final board. We were very confident. We had taken EMI/EMC considerations early in the design itself, but as we went along through the designs, we got so lost in working on new features that we kind of let it slip. Basic rules are, every signal should have a short return path to ground, right? I mean, that's almost the basic thing. But as we kept adding components, we kind of lost track of that. And we go for our final compliance testing, and we see these two nasty peaks on the. I think this is a horizontal sweep of 30 to 200 megahertz. Emitted radiations, which means that this failed. We cannot ship this device. So this happened because, again, we went too fast. We added stuff too fast, and we lost track of EMI guidelines. So yeah, the lesson here is, be ready for failures and fixes. So what we did, luckily there was only one version in between. From 5.6 to 5.7, we were able to fix those peaks, and you can see everything is under control here. So what we did is we kind of ripped up the entire board and relayed all the traces, and it's some people think it's as simple as relocating a couple of inductors and the peaks go away. They don't. We tried that. They don't, and we had to lay the entire board. And there are some things specific to medical devices. FDA, whether it is in US or in India or in other countries, wherever you're from, these set of IEC 60601-2- there are a bunch of standards which have got observed naming conventions. And then you get a consultant and give him a lot of money to tell you what to do. But you can anyway get asked a lot of questions. Sometimes you'll get a question, or we got 48 of them, which we had to answer in 3 months. and for each question the consultant charges us. Right? So these are some typical barriers to medical devices, and why medical devices, I mean, if you're really targeting medical devices for use in the hospital, crowdfunding may not really work out. So a quick roadmap. Um, so we've come until HealthyPi 5, and people have already started using it for field research, clinical research applications, where, we started with the patient monitor concept, and where we ended up is, this is what we meant by production grade, right? So it can be used in field applications for recording human vital signs. It is certified, so it has been used in a lot of clinical research applications all over the world. Everything ranging from, we've seen the most common is cardiac studies and everything, and also where you put all these vital signs together. And there was a recent challenge about, can you actually detect septic shock using this? So we demonstrated that we can actually run a small machine learning model on the device. We used edge impulse. This device now supports edge impulse with a native API for that. So we can collect the data, push it to edge impulse, and take the resulting model and put it on here to run the TensorFlow model. This is all possible because of, and this all works on the RP2040. And the one in yellow is the one that we are working on right now, HealthyPi Move. Some of the questions we got asked from the people who have used it for field uses: can you make one that is wearable and still collect all the data that is being collected? So we took on that challenge, and this is a watch-based device. I mean, I have a prototype if you want to see. So it doesn't calculate heart rate from PPG because from the optical pulse rate, because there are known inconsistencies between them, right? So this records ECG from, similar to how all these commercial smartwatches do. They have two electrode pads that touch the arm, and you take the second thing to second hand, and that gives you a left arm and right arm configuration, and that gives this kind of an ECG peak. And we were able to successfully filter that out to give this quality. And it's also got SpO2, but we're not, again, the SpO2 that we get from here is not accurate, and there are a lot of studies to prove that. So, which means that the commercial watches cannot be used for clinical studies. So, we are actually running a device, a small PCB up to the fingertip, and collecting data through an I2C interface. And using the ECG and PPG, we also calculate blood pressure trends, not absolute blood pressure, but the variations in blood pressure over the clinical trial, or however long the study may be, and temperature. So again, it's the same code base. We're building on top of it. So quick summary. Yes, it is possible to take both paths. Although taking it from an open source, I would like to remind you that the original HealthyPatch design is still open source. It's still available on GitHub, and it's still available on Hackaday. It's just that we are not making and selling them anymore. So instead, we are making and selling patch. Crowdfunding is a very sustainable way to raise funding. And of course, winning the Hackaday Prize was much more fun than writing business plans, and I really hated that. And listening to customers, but all said and done, right now, I've told you that we finished our commitment of getting HealthyPi to the market. So after that, I uh, have taken a back seat, and I'm back into working full time on open source hardware, and that's where I plan to be. And also things like Zephyr and all the new tools that come up make hardware much more accessible than it was before. 7 years ago, building something like that with a NatMel chip was quite a challenge. Now it doesn't feel like a challenge anymore, which is kind of disappointing in a way that it is it's not a challenge, right? So, but still makes things easier. And yeah, listen to your customers unless you want to spend a lot on multiple prototypes. I think yeah, that's my talk. And you can write to me if you have any questions, and I'll be around. And that's our crowdfunding campaign, which is now closed, but it will be available soon. Thank you. So I think I finished within time. So if I have some time for questions, I can take them. No? Yeah.
So you come back into open source.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you dipped into making business.
Yeah, yeah. No, I still, yeah, I'm sorry.
What do you bring back to open source hardware from that experience? What's the biggest thing you think you bring back?
I'm still running a business, right? So this open source hardware business is also a business. Although you keep getting asked, okay, how are you making money? Is this a charity and all that? Uh, but in the end, people still buy these devices. So my experience is that, I mean, in open source hardware and with crowdfunding especially, you get to answer to your customers, which is much more straightforward and more fun than answering to investors. Investor meetings are dull, right? Um, so I think that way, coming back to open source has been um, it's a shock in a little bit in a few ways, because you're suddenly faced with, okay, uh, funding wise you're back where you are, and all that. But so we finished HealthyPi, all the development last year, so it's been the second year we're back into open source, and HealthyPi 5 is the result of that. Okay.
Curious. So is your hardware capable enough that you could potentially do different applications like maybe audio feedback for brain waves?
Yeah, yeah. So here in the roadmap, I forgot to mention that on HealthyPi 5, we've created a modular system. So you get to add more stuff, right? So EMG is for electromyography, GSR for studying emotions and stuff like that, and EEG for brain wave activity. And we have been doing a side project now that we are open source and nobody asks us questions. So we've been doing a side project on brain computer interfaces using HealthyPi. In fact, one was a recent thing that we helped out a student team. They made a an EEG controlled wheelchair for people on prosthesis. Yes.
So let's say someone wants to build some application that is not open source, but they want to use your hardware for that. Do you see something like that could work potentially or not? Like
Um,
it's a combination, right? Let's say you have a great platform, but then someone wants to build something very specific and they don't want to, like they want to build a business in non-open source way. Can that combination work in your opinion?
Yeah, yeah. If they want to take a HealthyPi 5, and this has also happened before, people have taken HealthyPi, not the 5, the previous versions, and built their own product around it and sold it. And and we follow the licenses that I forget which license we kept updating the licenses, but um, um, we make sure that these are not restrictive licenses, because as long as it grows, it grows. I mean, we don't restrict that it has to be open sourced, unless there are any other software components that are distributed under GPL or something like that. So yeah, there's no restrictions. And people have used it, and people have also asked us, can you do small modules? I mean, right now, if you see most of the patient monitors that are coming from Philips and GE and everything, they are all based on one OEM module, which takes ECG, respiration, and SpO2, and they plug it into their uh, patient monitors, and that pretty much powers everything which is there. So people have asked us, can you make something like that and provide? And we said, sure. I mean, if that is a real requirement, then we can make OEM modules. But these OEM modules, you can also tune the software according to your own applications. One very common issue that we face always is people coming back to us saying SpO2 is not accurate. Now, for those of you who have worked on SpO2 and PPG devices, um, SpO2 is a very, it's not as straightforward as ECG, where you see the peaks, measure the timing. SpO2 is kind of like a derived thing. It's more of an empirical calculation. So if you really want to, I mean, now the best way to validate an SpO2 device is only compare it against another device. That's the only thing that's available right now. There is no measurement of intervals, no measurement of amplitude, nothing. So, so if they really want, and it also varies according to skin color, right? So what that we calibrated on the Indian population may not work here. So that requires something called a breathe down test, where you get a bunch of subjects in a room and ask them to hold their breath until they don't die, I guess, and then measure. And for even lower perfusion, lower blood flow, lower perfusion things that mainly happen during COVID, the testing is even more rigorous. But yeah, you do compare against some other device called the gold standard. So yeah. Okay. Anything else? Oh, yes.
Do you use a feature of Zephyr that lets you update your product in the field?
Yeah. We of course we use MCU boot, which is the main bootloader for this, and we use uh, the DFU is done through Bluetooth or USB. The Bluetooth has the SMP service, which is very well supported in Zephyr, and it's very reliable also. And the addition of the secure element which is used to store the keys makes it more secure as well. It makes MCU boot more secure. I mean, it's getting better every day. I mean, recently Zephyr 3.5 was released, and it really took me back. So, yeah. Thank you.